What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the remote front office. Today, after the shocking news we got Wednesday of the Damian Lillard trade, today we are covering possible trade destinations for Jrue Holiday. Hopefully, 5 seconds after this video comes out, Jrue Holiday doesn't get traded. But I feel like that's typical how it goes because Monday we did a Dame video and Wednesday he got traded. But anyhow, if you guys are new to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button, turn notifications on. We are on our way to 20 subs. I appreciate every single one of you. Monday, Wednesday, Friday around here. The season's almost here. Now that the the Dame Lillard trade is done and moved on with, we can kind of resume the rest of the plans I had for this season. As far as, playoff predictions, finals predictions, MVP predictions, all that stuff. We can now finally get into that because Dame Lillard has finally been moved. But today we are doing my top 5 plus a bonus team of my favorite Jrue Holiday destinations. No, I do not have packages necessarily for all of them. I have kind of a general blueprint for some teams, and other teams I just really like the fit. One of them kind of came to my head, and it's going to be number 5. But anyhow, let's go ahead and get into this. So, honorable mention team, I think it is more so due to the fact of I don't know what the pieces are that get the trade done. Is Minnesota. It would essentially evolve around Mike Conley, Jrue Holiday, whatever else, because I don't really know what's left in Minnesota. But I love the idea. You get Anthony Edwards, somebody that can handle the ball alongside him, complements him really well. Essentially does what Mike Conley would be for this team as far as a floor spacer, a general, a plus defender. You could have him guard the best guards or forwards, and then Ant kind of takes that second guy as he matures into eventually being the guy that's probably guarding the best player on the team, right? The only thing with Minnesota doing this is Jrue is on an expiring, and I don't know if he'd stay in Minnesota. So that is the one swing and a miss here. Another team that I haven't really heard talked about that I feel like should be talked about that would be interesting, and this is going to be my number 5 team, is the Oklahoma City Thunder. I know you're going to ask, why OKC? Here's the thing. They have a bajillion draft picks. You're obviously not going to keep all of those guys. And from pretty much everything I've heard, this upcoming class is one of the weaker classes, right? You do have the Houston pick. Granted, I don't think you throw the Houston pick on the table for Jrue. But they do have other picks here and there that they could possibly throw into this, as well as a mix of young player and some older guys to get eventually to that salary cap or the salary they would need to trade for Jrue, right? And I would like to see him next to a SGA, Giddey, Holiday trio, and kind of go back to like a 3-guard lineup like they had a couple years ago when they had Billy Donovan as a coach. I think it would be really interesting. Just to have kind of that complimentary guy next to Shea, right? Number 4, not as fun necessarily, but that is going to be the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets, due to trading for Harden, don't have all of their picks, and I feel like they want to be relatively competitive. I understand that they regressed pretty bad. Obviously, you lost Durant and Kyrie mid-season last year. But I think with Mikal Bridges evolving to what he's evolved into, you can add a guy like Jrue Holiday and still be back in that playoff mix. Again, kind of the same thing for Minnesota. I don't know if he stays in Brooklyn just because of the lack of necessarily a championship window I see there. But, I mean, if you can get Jrue and then maybe you can kind of mortgage a couple other pieces into another star, and then all of a sudden you have a big 3 and you're off and running, right? So that is team number 4. Team number 3 is going to be the Los Angeles Clippers. This one, I think, ends up in more of a 3-way deal with the Sixers, as far as Jrue going to the Sixers and Harden going to the Clippers. But I also do think there is a possibility where the Clippers just cut off the middleman, because personally, I would rather have Jrue Holiday than James Harden, but I've been pretty vocal on my thoughts on James Harden. So I just think you would really add to the defensive philosophy with this team of having PG, Kawhi, and Jrue all on the wings playing defense at the same time. You get kind of a point guard. I understand Drew's more of a combo guard, but I love the idea of him there facilitating that offense, and just defensively, I think that helps that team so much. Number 2, is going to be the Boston Celtics. Um, the kind of general throw around I heard on uh, the ESPN podcast today was like Brogdon, salary filler picks, right? They did mention Robert Williams in that trade. I don't love it. I feel like that's giving up on Robert Williams, who I think is on a better contract despite the injuries. Like I do understand that injury prone between him and Brogdon, you ship them out, you get it all under one guy, and then you're starting a lineup essentially of either Holiday, White, Brown, Tatum, Porzingis, or you're having Derek White come off the bench and you're putting Horford in that 4 spot. I do think it offers a lot of flexibility, and I do think it just kind of gives this team a little bit more of a stabilizer. And also, Jrue Holiday is kind of giving this team a little bit of problems in the playoffs. But I do think that throwing in Robert Williams is too much because you're giving up on your center depth. Because him nor Porzingis necessarily is the most healthy person ever, and Al Horford's like 36. I also heard a rumor of thinking about throwing Derek White in. I don't think that makes any sense. I think Derek White is probably the safest out of all your guards, right? I assume it would be, again, Brogdon, like probably Peyton Pritchard thrown in there, other salary filler picks, right? My number one team that kind of came out of the blue initially, and then I thought about it for a second. Golden State. So you've already got Chris Paul, who is basically the salary filler for the situation. He's on an expiring. You could flip him or buy him out at the deadline if you're Portland. Worst case scenario, he's there to mentor some guys, and you treat this like Al Horford in OKC for a year, right? Where he's not playing, he's there to mentor, and essentially he's like a really expensive coach, and then you either release him at the deadline or you trade him, and then next year he's had a year to sit, he's healthy, he's good to go. And then you throw in a guy like Moses Moody, probably, I'm assuming. I personally wouldn't give up on Kuminga quite yet. I still like the idea of Kuminga. But I do think Moses Moody's probably the more ready now player. So it would be interesting to see as far as which direction Golden State would go, right? But I think just having a starting lineup of, since you're so adamant on keeping this salary slot, you would have Holiday, Steph, Clay, Wiggins, Draymond as a closing lineup. You are getting back a perimeter defender, which was Clay for a while, but he's clearly lost that step, I think. He's at that point in his career where he is less of a game in, game out best defender on the court. You're also relieving a little bit of that pressure from Andrew Wiggins. I feel like Wiggins the last couple of years has had to be that primary defensive guy when you need to stop the most, right? He's the guy you throw on the bigger wings. He's the guy you throw on the guards. I think you're relieving that pressure from Andrew Wiggins and allowing him to kind of take a step back on that. And then you're also not asking as much of Draymond, right? You're asking Draymond to go back to playing a role and being able to help off of a pick and roll or being able to rotate and trusting Jrue Holiday is going to have his back on a rotation. And also, I think Jrue Holiday probably fits a little bit better as far as the ball movement. I don't think he's going to want to be as ball dominant as Chris Paul. So instead of having Chris Paul ask for a pick and roll every possession with Kevin Looney or something, you have Jrue Holiday, who I think will fit a little more seamlessly into this offense. Some other honorable mentions. Again, the Sixers I kind of threw by in passing, just because I think in order for that to work, you have to take on Harden or maybe Tobias Harris, but then you're essentially just back into the same boat of trying to find a team to take those players. The Miami Heat was initially, once the Dame deal was done, that was kind of the first team that came to mind. But obviously, I don't think you're giving up Tyler Hero. I think that is more of a Kyle Lowry, Nikola Jovic, and a first and some swaps or something like that. And then obviously a couple other teams just to kind of throw them out there. You've got the Dallas Mavericks, who still, for whatever reason, are in these rumors. I don't quite understand it because Luka's not a 3, Luka's a 1. And you've already got Kyrie. So I just think adding Holiday, I understand from a defensive perspective, but I think just as a general overall team, I don't know if you can add him there. Really any team that's contending, I would like to see try and go for them. New Orleans was another team that was thrown out there that was kind of interesting. Just for that one, though, I assume you have to give up CJ. And then, again, if you're Portland, A, you brought CJ back, and B, you're kind of in the same deal of you want to shop CJ because CJ has an extension now. Utah's kind of a sneaky team. I think if they want to be competitive, I just don't know if they're the type of franchise that's going to throw it in for a rental. I heard a rumor of Chicago, and I just want to say this right now. I'm going to look right at the camera when I say this. No, absolutely not. For all the same reasons I put out in the damn video on Monday. No. Okay? Look at me, Chicago. AK, that front office. No. Okay? Cool. And the last team I wanted to mention is the New York Knicks, right? So they have all these draft picks. Granted, they're not great draft picks. A lot of them are pretty heavily protected. But I think between like the Evan Fournier contract, probably Quentin Grimes, and then some salary filler, you could get to the number pretty easily. And I don't think you'd have to give up a whole war chest of picks, and you would still have picks to potentially go get another disgruntled star, right? If Embiid's frustrated in a year and a half, or whoever the next guy is, because it seems like we get 2 or 3 of them, right? Or maybe Paul George wants to do a sign and trade deal or something like that, right? You have all these different options for guys who you still have enough flexibility to go get another guy, right? On top of having Jalen Brunson and potentially Jrue Holiday. And I also think Jrue Holiday just complements Jalen Brunson a lot better than Dame would, right? With Dame, it was a lot of both heavy ball handlers, offensive guys that need to set up in their spots, whereas I think Jrue would fit in more seamlessly, if that makes sense. Another dark horse team, again, I don't think he would stay here. Orlando Magic need kind of just a guy to run the show, and I think he'd fit in really well there. But yeah, that is my thought on the Jrue Holiday possible trade destinations. If you guys have any you think of, or even just some thrown together mock trades and stuff, I'd be happy to go over those. But in the meantime, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.